Hello, my name's Nigel Semmence, and today I'm going to talk to you about the Yellowlegged Hornet, otherwise known as Asian Hornet, and give you an update on the current situation in the UK with it. I will cover in this talk a whole range of subjects covering from the strategy through to the current numbers of nests and current situation, and a whole range of improvements that we've put in place over the last few years, but a lot of which have happened this winter, learning from lessons identified from last year's outbreak, and that includes spring trapping, a lot of awareness raising actions, and a huge range of wider agency support that I will discuss in detail. The strategy is eradication. This is set by DEFRA, and the MBU as part of APHA follow that strategy, and part of the Healthy Bees plan is for us to work together with stakeholders to prevent establishment. It's a government-led and funded response, and funded mainly by DEFRA, but then within that we have a number of departments and agencies that work together. The UK CEH do the lead gathering and triaging for us, an absolute essential part of it, and you will see the numbers of that later on in the talk. And the track and trace is carried on by the MBU. I've talked a lot about that in the past, and we'll cover what we're doing currently, but not down to the detail that we've covered in previous talks. And then we have our wildlife team that do the chemical destruction and removal for us, and the science as well behind that done by Ferrous Science Limited, which includes the confirmation of identification, analysis of nests, size of the nests and numbers of combs, and then very importantly, and of which you've had several talks before, the DNA analysis and relatedness. That won't be covered in much detail in this talk. And then also not really mentioned too much before, but I've talked about in previous talk wider agency support. That now is growing greatly, and we're using a lot of various departments within APHA that I will mention in this talk, and also stakeholders. The involvement of BBKA, Welsh beekeepers, the AHAT teams is absolutely key, and we will discuss that as well. In 2023 we had 72 nests in 56 locations. On the left here you can see the UK map with them, so they were mainly coastal locations apart from the southeast where it went right into London. The majority of the numbers were in Kent and East Sussex, as you can see here on the right hand side of this map, and we've talked about these locations in the past. In 2024 so far, up to date, and changing as I speak, we've had 47 credible sightings and 10 nests found. They are distributed, as you can see here, one in East Sussex and the rest in Kent in the cluster, very much in the area of where they were last year. Time will tell if these are related to previous nests or if these are all fresh incursions, or a mixture of the two when we get the DNA analysis of all the nests and we're further into the season as well. To give you an idea of UK nest numbers over time, the left-hand chart here shows it from 2016 up to last year, and we're getting an average of 2 nests a year until last year when we got the 72. So a huge increase in that, partly due to the weather, partly due to a build-up of nests in France and more queens coming across in the spring, a range of factors involved in it. And then if you look by month, and this includes in the light green the nest so far this year, it compares it to last year. As you'll all be aware and have seen the many press reports, this spring has been spring and early summer has been a particularly bad one for bees, wasps, most insects, and it looks like Asian hornet numbers or yellow-legged hornet numbers are behind a little bit, but of course we've still got the rest of the season to go, and that will be interesting to see. Also remember, we've had an eradication policy, so with any nest, any sighting we got, we follow up and do to destruction of the nests, so therefore there isn't a growing established population in the UK as far as we can tell. Important changes that have happened so far is we're continuously updating our rolling news page, and if you're interested in these sightings, please go on to that page. It's just been updated this weekend. We now have photos of most sightings on there. There's a link to them shown here, and then far more detail than we've released in the past on each sighting, telling you if it's a member of public or a beekeeper, who detected, the date of sighting, and going all the way through to when the nest was destroyed. One interesting aspect this year, different very much so to previous years, is we're now getting multiple sightings per nest, and that is due to the fabulous response by the local Asian Hornet teams down in Sussex and Kent, who, when we get a nest and we start the process of track and trace and destroying that, they're also doing wider surveillance round each of these nests and reporting more hornets. DNA analysis is going on with all of them. Hopefully they all relate to the close nest, which is certainly the case in some of the early samples so far, but that is very important to us. But that changes that, so you'll see in some cases we have multiple sightings per location, and we just have to wait to see what the DNA and further monitoring brings to see if there's other nests in that locale. I've shown you this slide before, but it's still very valid. For spotting a yellow-legged hornet, especially at this time of year, it's not really very difficult. They fly up to a km from the nest. If they're in your locality, as the nest gets bigger and bigger as the season progresses, you will see them on ivy, other flowering plants, on fallen fruit. Bottom right is an apple that's been squashed in Hampshire when we had an earlier nest in previous years. On trees or wood where they're collecting paper or resins for their nest. On meat, on carrion, on dead rabbit, that sort of thing, hedgehog, any sort of meat, roadside casualty, they retrieve that and take that back for their young, to feed to their young in the nest. And also they go to beehives, obviously a ready source of bees, of meat again for their young. Conveniently packaged, if you like, for them, and in one site in large numbers, and they do hawk in front and can be easily spotted, and we've shown you videos of that, and they're available on Beebase if you wish to look at them. They're also attracted to honey and wax smells, again because it's a nest, and collecting sweet substances as well. Just some examples of nests we've had this year. So we had the embryo nest in May, found in a roadside cafe in Kent, with the queen, you can see here, returning with a meat parcel under her chin, so to speak, and she's returning to the nest to feed that to the young. And shortly after that, she was caught in a Tupperware tub and frozen and sent to the lab for analysis. And then we've got other nests in the typical locations we've had previously in most cases. Brambles is a very common one, or any form of undergrowth, especially for primary nests early in the year. At this time of year we will have both primary and secondary, often in the same spot or close, within 100 meters of each other. Another location, they very often nest close to human habitation in sheds and things like this, and barbecues have had them on the bottom of them before. Now we've got a nest this year within a barbecue, and then typical nests up in the top of trees. You can just see it in the centre there if your eyesight is good, and then we haven't had many in the UK on houses, but one this year up in the top and bottom of the soffit there, as you can see. I mentioned improvements that we've done, a huge range of them, and this is just some key examples here. We did spring trapping this year, first time we've done a coordinated spring trapping, and that was because of the number of nests we had last year and certain hot spots within there where we thought it was a high risk of those nests having produced gines, and we'll talk about that in detail. We've done a huge number of updates on Beebase pages, Dr. Kirsty Stainton is doing a rolling updating of B-Base, and the fact sheets and other things have been all brought up to speed, so that's very useful. Lots of increased awareness raising. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the MBU has done, DEFRA has done, but also beekeepers, BBKA, Kirstine and her work. All of these has been absolutely super, and very, very important to raise more awareness out there. And then we've done lots of improvements in the background, often unseen, on sightings and triaging, and we work very closely with UKCH and with the BBKA on that, and more improvements are coming in that area. And Asian Hornet teams, I must thank them in every talk I do. The huge amount of work, and especially in Kent, they are working very closely with the inspectors. They're a close-knit team, really, both together, and the wider surveillance they do to enable our teams to carry on with the destructions is very valuable to us. And then what has increased very much a little bit last year, but more so this year, is the wider agency support. Asian Hornet has raised its profile due to the number of nests last year, and due to all the increased communications and media interest, and hence we now got a vast amount of support from primarily our contingency planning division, and they are historically an animal-based support unit, but now support us and plant health as well. And we have also very usefully been able to use a central outbreak resourcing team to help us select bee inspectors or other members of staff to go down to outbreaks, and that has released a lot of MBU staff and time from doing that. And then we've got a huge range of other inspectors who have joined in, non-native species, plant and animal inspectors as well, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. We work very closely with Welsh Government. The MBU has an English and Welsh inspectorate that work hand in hand, and the Welsh inspectors are involved in English outbreaks of yellow-legged hornet. But we this year have also brought down Scottish inspectors. I think we've got 6 inspectors, 2 a week for 3 weeks, currently deployed, and that is very useful to us. Obviously useful to them to get the experience of yellow-legged hornet track and trace, but very useful to us to get the extra resource as well. Spring trapping, very key, and if you remember back to the genetic analysis from that, we identified a whole range of risk points for that, mainly down in Kent, unfortunately behind my head, I apologise, they'll be clearer on maps in a moment. These were key points where we believed the nests had got to the stage of producing gines or got to the stage of producing drones, and there was a risk of producing gines, and we had key points of that. So there was Plymouth, Yarm, and obviously a cluster in Kent. The spring surveillance looked a little bit like this. It was approved by Lord Douglas Miller and Professor Nicholas Spence early in February time, and we started queen trapping at the end of March and carried on to the end of June. We used 5 km zones around each of 18 nests, which were considered the risk nests, and we did 1 trap per square km, checked 2 to 3 times a week. These are very similar programs to that done in Jersey and Guernsey. We used modified Vespa traps, and they were modified to reduce bycatch, and we did around 1,000 grid squares monitored, and used 70 APHA staff. Interestingly, because of the resourcing and obviously the clash with our start of season tech training and other activities in the MBU, only 1/3 of them were from the MBU. The rest were from plant and animal inspectors, who often paired up with experienced MBU inspectors to start with, but soon became very used to checking traps and were a very welcome increase in resource for us. Over that period of time, we caught 13 queens caught in the MBU traps, 5 more were caught by beekeepers or members of the public. The dark green squares are ones that had traps present in them, and this is just towards the end of the response. To give you an indication, 9 of the queens were from the Four Oaks nest. The Four Oaks nest was the centre of this circle here, so approximately there. And by genetic analysis, they have been shown to be gines from the Four Oaks nest from last year. They were all within 4.1 km of that nest, so quite interesting. We've done a lot of work also on beekeeper awareness. A huge amount of changes. As I mentioned previously, the rolling news page on BeeBase has been changed. We've changed the monitoring station traps fact sheet. Also, the pages have all been brought up to speed on how to report sightings and the rest of it as well. Lots of talks undergone. Obviously, we've got this talk being presented in part of Asian Hornet Week. We've got many talks being done at BBK Association meetings, at regional meetings by RBIs. I spoke at the BBK Asian Hornet Conference in February and the Bee Farmers Day as well, and we also had RHS Chelsea, which we had a stand at, which I'll mention in a moment. The updated Asian Hornet, or as will be changed shortly, Yellowlegged Hornet monitoring fact sheet has come out. So that shows how to monitor, how to use wick bait stations. Talks about many of the selective traps out there, more and more coming, and we welcome all of these as they become more selective and catch less bycatch, and therefore reducing the impact of our trapping programs. RHS Chelsea was done in May. Took a huge amount of time and work. Was done by a team within plant health inspector, or led by them, but used a lot of inspectors on the stand and in the background providing technical information for it. Obviously lots of comms from that, a press release, and then it was on BBC News, Sky News, Telegraph, Daily Star, etc, etc. So a huge raising of public awareness, obviously mainly aiming at gardeners, but also at the general public as well. Obviously gardeners are key to spotting yellow-legged hornets as they're in their gardens and likely to see them. During the response this year as well, we've done a lot of media activities. This is all organised, so we get bids to us from the various media, and we tried to put that together on a couple of days to reduce the impact, and that's been done for BBC, Channel 5, Daily Express article, which you can see on the right here, and there are Asian Hornet press releases in progress at the moment for Asian Hornet Week as well. As I've mentioned several times, Asian Hornet teams are very key to our response. We couldn't do it without them. They're key to the initial following up of sightings and to helping out in the response. Raising awareness, a huge amount of little stands done at all sorts of different shows across the country this winter and spring, helping public beekeepers with ID. We'll talk about the number of sightings in the moment, and very few of them are actually correct as yellow-legged hornet. The great majority are incorrect. When we were doing Chelsea in May, obviously that's when European hornet queens were coming out, and even stood on the stand there in one day. I had about 20 or so photographs handed to me, all of European hornet, with the person going, is this a yellow-legged hornet? Yeah, awareness of commonly mistaken insects is key, and then wider monitoring during and after a response, very important to us and very helpful. And we are, as I said earlier, doing many improvements, working very closely with Asian Hornet teams. The key part of that during and after response is the relationship between the local incident commander and the local AHATs, the coordinators, and that is absolutely key and very important. Local events, there's been many local events, as I've said, and here are just two examples of these, led by BBK, and many other events done and press releases done by the central BBK team as well, all of which are appreciated and very helpful. But if I can encourage you all as local association members to do more raising awareness of Asian hornet, whether or not it be a summer show, a local gardening show, talk, or something like that. A whole range of opportunities to do it. On the right here is down Kent, where they were putting out spring traps around some of the nest sites. Obviously, all this increased comms leads to increased numbers of I've seen an Asian hornet. All of these are triaged by UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology for us. The key method, if we would like to push, is the Asian Hornet Watch app, followed by the form, and less so the alert email. And the reason for that being is they're very hard for UKCEH to process in the way they come in. Alerts have increased dramatically, as you can see here, 20,000 in 2023, a huge jump. And then we've already had, due in part to Chelsea and all the other media events, up to more than the whole of last year, up to July so far this season. So 23,000, that's this spike here in orange, and that's quite worrying to us. And there's quite a lot of work going on in the background to put things in progress to help UKCH triage the sightings. One of the key things is very much for us to encourage that must send in photographs with sightings. That allows them to go straight through the system and get sent to us, and we can send out inspectors. People just putting a description in. We have followed up many of these, and the great majority turned up not to be Asian hornet. So the important thing is to include photographs with the reports. They really do make life far easier and more effective. The wider agency support, we are part of the MBU, is part of the Animal and Plant Health Agency. We have over 3,000 employees in UK-wide officers, as shown on the right hand side here. As part of that, there is the inspectorates, which are part of the Service Delivery Directorate, and that's approximately 1,900 people, including the wildlife team, non-native species, plant health and seeds, and animal health. And we're increasingly getting access to those people, and they obviously all have the equipment or basic equipment that we have, and are signed up employees. So being able to send them to a response, we're able to do that very quickly, and give them training on site. As I said previously, we often pair them up with experienced inspectors, and they very quickly learn how to do spring trapping, how to do track and trace, and they can support in many other functions as well. As part of the wider agency support, and this has helped me tremendously and other members of the senior management team, is the Contingency Planning Division, and they provide us with outbreak resourcing, with admin support. They help with the setting up of forward operating bases, a whole range of other outbreak support services. One thing that sort of goes on unseen in the contingency responses we have, as shown, you won't be able to read it, but from the start of a sighting going through, there's a whole series of meetings that are kicked off involving DEFRA, APHA, National Disease Control Centres, lead government department meetings, a whole range of things, and they help us with doing that, and that's very useful to us. We also, throughout every winter, and that's it, I seem to spend my winter doing this every year, is the lessons identified process, where we learn and put in and have an action plan we put in place for implementing all the things that we can improve going forward. And we've done that every year since 2016. Obviously, the more people you involve in an outbreak, the more that grows. So it is becoming a full-time, all-year-round job for us now, but very important to the response. And also, what the CPDs, or a certain part of it, the outbreak resourcing has done for us, is also helped us to bring in the devolved governments. That has been very important, and we've got, as I mentioned earlier, 6 Scottish inspectors being deployed to 2 a week for over 3 weeks. Other technologies that are coming along and we've got deployed at the moment is Vespi from the University of Exeter, from Professor Juliet Osborne and colleagues, and we've got one development model down there at the moment, and in fact this picture here showing a wasp, an unmarked Asian hornet and marked Asian hornets, and you can't see it but it has correctly identified these 3 as Asian hornets regardless of whether or not they have a blob of paint on the back, was actually a photograph from Kent this year. So it's early days, but we're helping them with their development and encouraging the use of this sort of technology where effectively a camera trap can be left out there. It processes many images and then reports back when it's a confirmed Asian hornet, obviously with not having to have a member of staff on site compared to watching a bait station, for example. So obviously a huge number of benefits to that. Early days, but very promising. At the same time, another company, Pollenize, is doing a similar thing. They are produced a unit that vaporizes the bait and the tracks in Asian hornets, and then that's linked with an AI-powered reporting app that you position your phone and video any hornets that are attracted into that. Again, both of these companies are reporting any Asian hornet sightings to us. Pollenize has a number of units out around in Kent and on the south coast, and we welcome the use of all of these, and as I said earlier, all the modified traps that are out there as well. So key points, we're still in the eradication phase of the contingency response. We found 10 nests so far in Kent or East Sussex. The key action we want you to be doing is raising awareness and recognition of yellow-legged hornet and commonly mistaken insects, and please participate in your local Asian hornet teams, and through that you'll be requested, if sightings come up near you, to do monitoring as requested by your Asian hornet team coordinator or the MBU. And as I mentioned previously, please report sightings with a photograph on the Asian Hornet Watch app. And finally, please may I say thank you to everyone, to all the inspectors involved who do sterling work, often in hot and sweaty conditions, to all the AHAT team members, to the members of the public, to everyone from the wider agencies who support. It's a very big operation now, and it is very, it couldn't be done just by the MBU on its own, and thank you all for your help.